Hello, Madrid. Welcome to another episode of Let's Be Real podcast. Today, without our regular, host who is actually in the chat himself, Jacob. But then, yeah, we have even a better guest, Jacob, today, in the person of Mo. So, Mo, man, welcome, and yeah, glad to have you on. Feeding for Jacob, both literally and and physically as well.
Yeah, and I'm here today filling in for Jacob because Jacob is out partying. So, I'll try my best. But then again, talking to you is always a pleasure. So, here I am.
Yeah, Jacob is out partying, and he left the preview gang, alone, and unfortunately, Mo's here to fill in to fill in the spot. But anyways, without further ado, let's just get into the stuff. Like, as the title says, it's Alaves preview, but even a bit more importantly, it's the reactions of the UCL draw. So, I remember Mo was talking about the fact that he actually wanted, a totally new opponent, but then yeah, karma happened, and basically we have Leipzig again. Who it's basically been how I think it's going to be our third encounter with them in the past couple of years or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Leipzig, I think we faced them in the group stage last year.
Yeah,
So we played them twice, and I think Leipzig is the only German team we actually lost a game to in the last decade or something. So
yeah,
yeah, it's gonna be interesting for me personally. I think facing Leipzig, their style is like you know, uh, our their style doesn't really suit us because I think they play a high intensity brand of football. If you don't really get grips with the game and control the pace, I think Leipzig have the ability to hurt us. So not very happy about the draw, but we'll talk about it in detail. But yeah, that's my initial impression.
yeah. That's very right. And actually you rightly pointed out the fact that it's important to remember that although we know we won the first leg at home, we lost the second leg to them in Germany. Okay, albeit under the circumstances that the passage to the next round had already been secured. So, but yeah, still a loss is a loss. And you rightly mentioned the fact that the intensity might be one of the teams that actually rightfully or wrongfully is set up to exploit the gaps that we have on our team. But before we get into our team, like what's the draw that intrigued you the most out of all the ties?
Personally, I'm a little bit disappointed with the draw because I didn't really get that marquee matchup in the round of 16 that we usually get. I was hoping PSG would get a big opponent, right? Because they were the biggest team in among the unseeded teams. So the teams that finished second. So I was hoping they would at least get a Barcelona or maybe Man City or Bayern. But they got lucky and they sneakily avoided all of these teams. So for me, yeah, a little bit of disappointment with the draw. But overall, looking at it, I think Atleti versus Inter definitely has to stand out, right, as the biggest draw. But uh, it's not exactly a clash of styles. I don't know. Both of these teams are incredibly good defensively, but it'll be interesting, watching the likes of Griezmann go against defenders like Bastoni. If I remember, we were talking about Bastoni like the last time around after the podcast, right? About defenders who we could sign
Yeah,
instead
yeah.
of David Alaba. Like, yeah, I mean, we don't really think it's a realistic signing, but it's definitely like we all can dream, right? Dreaming is free. So at least I live in a free country where I can dream freely, if nothing else.
Yeah, that's very true, and as you rightly pointed out, I also got that feeling that yeah. But one thing for sure is that we know that the last is going to be a really really interesting tie, considering what's the draws that we have. Like it's like it has been carefully selected such that you go to the round of 16 and you don't have any empty tie. Obviously, like you might run up onto the PSV match and be like, yeah, okay, that's one of the games that will most likely provide you know a cannon fodder in the last eight, maybe or maybe not. But I genuinely, believe that. And one game to look out for, other than the uh, Atleti game, it's actually Barcelona against Napoli. I actually feel like that's a game that has upset written all over it. I don't know how much you'll call it the upset because Napoli are still currently the defending champions of Italy. So it's quite
I was
interesting to see
thinking the
that as well.
upset would be Barcelona against Napoli. I don't know.
Well, that's honestly that's just the thing. It further tells you how much how much actually they have. Barcelona has fallen, but honestly, I think for me personally, I think honestly, like the PSG Borussia Dortmund game is going to be an interesting one because I think Borussia Dortmund is just one of those teams that you don't you just don't know what to expect, even though like the form in Europe has been phenomenal so far. But we have also the Dutch champions, who I still think Dutch teams also have this thing to them that they can be good in Holland, and but then when they come to Europe, like I just feel like they're still a tier below what the cream of the crop is. But I think it should be a really interesting game, with two young teams, free flowing football, basically nothing to lose. So I think it's going to be one of those affairs that might have a lot of goals in them.
I think personally, PSV Dortmund for me, the intrigue is like how the January window goes for them, because like with Dortmund we obviously have question marks about Edin Terzic and his continuity. There was a rumor recently that I managed to read on Reddit. I think it was yesterday, about a certain group of players going and talking to the Dortmund hierarchy and claiming that they aren't really on, like, let's say they aren't really in sync with Edin Terzic and his methods, and they seem to be struggling a little bit in the Bundesliga, right? But then there has also been news from the Dortmund side, the management, that they point out to Edin Terzic's performances in the Champions League, where they finished first in the group of death ahead of teams like PSG, Newcastle, and obviously AC Milan. So it's going to be interesting what happens over there. Will Terzic continue, or will Terzic be moved to another spot? Because we've also heard about that Terzic might go upstairs and be a sporting director or something else. So I think that's one place to look at. And for the fans of American football, it's always interesting to see the likes of Ricardo Pepi and the Serginho Dest and Malik Tillman. So we want to see how they perform. And then PSV, I think it's obvious that these guys have been dominant in Eredivisie right now. I was, last time we were talking about this, and just to like stress upon this more, they've like scored 55, 56 goals in the league and conceded only 6. So I think that speaks to the dominance of them. The last time I think we underestimated a Dutch side that was dominant was Ajax, and we all know how that turned out. Although, personally, I like to believe that 1819 never happened, but it did happen, and is in the history books. So for me, I think I would never underestimate a ADVZ team on the rise. So that's definitely going to be interesting this time.
Definitely, definitely. Like you pointed out, the turmoil going on at Borussia. It's quite interesting actually, because I actually recently learned that actually Terzic is actually a very close friend of Watzke as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the reason why Sebastian Kehl will leave, and he's gonna become a sporting director and then find a new coach. And I'm like, wow, like this is why they say like you should not mix business and pleasure. Like friendship should be somewhere and business should be other way. Honestly, it just makes no sense in all honesty.
I
But yeah,
mean,
moving on.
they could
Yeah,
definitely
go
use
on.
your help with that.
Well, I'm open. I'm open. Basically, anyone who's seeking, I don't know, a sporting director or anything of some sort, they know where to find me. But anyways, going on, I think one tie that might be a bit interesting, considering the indifference of Paris Saint-Germain. I think it's going to be their clash against, Real Sociedad. I think coming to Spain, at the Anoeta, I think they might be, in for a rude awakening, because if you remember, we lost. Actually, they haven't won any away games, this year. Like they lost in England, I think 4-0 to Newcastle. They were comprehensively outplayed. Although it was a 2-1 scoreline, at the San Siro, they were comprehensively outplayed. And even in the game against Borussia, I think last week it was almost a 50-50, you could say. Like it could have gone both ways. So the form away from France is not too promising. And even their form in the corner as well, it's a bit wobbly. And obviously, like the January transfer market also has a lot to play in there. But I don't know. Do you think there is any chance for Real Sociedad to pull something there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You can never underestimate La Real. But I think there's a difference in experience, right? PSG are Champions League regulars versus La Real. I think this is the first time, like in a long time, that I'm seeing them in the knockouts. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they handle the pressure. I think Imanol Alguacil has done a really good job with them over the years, and he was talking about how he started with the youth teams and he's progressed, and now he's part of the first team. And a lot of players that were with him in the youth stages are now up here with him in the first team and playing these Champions League knockouts. So I think it's definitely going to be interesting. It's a wonderful story. I think more wonderful than the story of Girona, because Girona obviously has that oil club backing, but La Real they have really done it the hard way. They have really pulled players from the grassroots. I remember there was a time when they had David Moyes as their coach and they were really struggling. So to go from there, and now Imanol Alguacil, I think he's done a brilliant job. I think if it was not for him, maybe Xabi Alonso would be coaching Sociedad instead of Leverkusen. But it is what it is. So I think from a Sociedad point of view and from La Liga point of view, this is gonna be an absolute platform, to showcase what La Liga is all about, because there's a lot of negativity that is associated with La Liga these days. So I think a good performance from them is definitely gonna help everybody, especially the La Liga teams, and we have seen that our teams have done well on a European stage. The likes of Villarreal beating Bayern Munich happened previously, to go to the semi-final. So I'm obviously team Sociedad Lares. So for me, I hope they win. But evaluating from a PSG perspective, there was a funny rumor recently that I heard from one of the United fan channels. They were talking about how PSG have been potentially linked with Casemiro. So I think that's definitely going to be an interesting one. But probably a low tier rumor, not to be. You don't really need to pay too much attention to it. So, but regardless, I think PSG are going to sign in the winter, because there was talk about Luis Enrique wanting midfielders or something that suit his style. Casemiro is probably not the one who suits his style, but it'll be interesting to see how they change their team, and the form of Dembele and the likes of Mbappe. Mbappe is a wild card, although there have been some rumors about him falling out with Luis Enrique. But let's see what happens there.
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be a rumor, like, with that, because the point is you could see how much, in the game against Borussia Dortmund. I watched that game hoping that, Borussia can get the job done and Newcastle can get the job done as well. So, Kylian Mbappe not exits Europe, but plays on Thursday. Yeah. So, he flies to, I don't know, Sparta, Prague. Okay, Prague is a beautiful city. Let's find
maybe
a city that has no name. Exactly. He flies to Karabakh away and goes to Azerbaijan, and you're not even, you go to Azerbaijan and you're going to a city that has no name. That's what I actually want. I want him to feel that humiliation, honestly. But anyways, that's away from the point. But you could see that, the way he was demonstrating with, with Luis Enrique, and even what Luis Enrique was saying afterwards, that this is the best decision I made in my life. Like, definitely, like, you don't have to be, a rocket scientist. Is just 1 + 1 is equals to 2. It's just quick maths. For sure, whatever they say or deny, there is a friction there. Obviously, like, between superstars and coaches, there's always going to be frictions. Even Luis Enrique won the treble with Barcelona while not getting along well with Neymar and Messi. That's something. So, but there is definitely friction there. But I just feel like, considering the fact, as you just mentioned now, what Alguacil has done with the team, considering just 2 goals, in the whole 6 games in the group stage, having the best defense, I think, Paris might be in for a rude awakening, honestly. But that's Paris for you, man. You just never can tell with them. Yeah, let's just move on and see. Arsenal against FC Porto. It's the team I actually wanted for Pepe's homecoming. But yeah, I genuinely just do not see any other outcome than an Arsenal victory for this. But I don't know if you can make a claim for FC Porto here.
I don't know, and it's like Arsenal are a pretty good team. They're in form. So probably they are the favorites, but I would never rule out Porto, former champions. Something that Arsenal cannot claim to be. So
Okay. Okay. I mean, that's a blow, but I know who this blow is aimed at, anyways. Like, if that's just a thing. Well, yeah, honestly, like, I think it's gonna be good for that Pepe to again showcase his talent. I saw at the weekend again. He showcased the side that we thought maybe might have been gone. I don't know if you saw that, the swing he had at a player which resulted in a red card. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Yeah, I did see that. He got a red card. It was all over it, and people were talking about, oh, he's returned to his old form or something like that.
Exactly. Prime Pepe, like he's playing like a very young man, and he's also moving with that that young habit of his that we he used to have. And before we go to my favorites, let's talk about Bayern Munich against Lazio. That's a game that I.
Lazio are actually one of the teams that I wanted to face because like I said, I never actually seen Real Madrid play them often. But they gave a good account of themselves in the group stages in the games against Atleti, and as you are probably more familiar with Serie A right now, and the fact that they are being coached by Maurizio Sarri, so I think it will be interesting to see them go up against a team coached by Thomas Tuchel, and Uh, Tuchel likes to point out the fact that he doesn't really have a defensive midfielder, so it'll be interesting to see if they get Palhinha from Fulham in the winter window. So I think this one is also going to be a good time, but for me personally, I think Bayern have that extra bit of quality that will easily take them through.
Yeah, definitely. Like actually, Lazio is right now really, really poor in in Serie A. They recently lost to they lost to Inter too. Okay, yeah, Inter is the best in Italy, yeah, but they recently lost to Inter sheepishly, in Rome actually, So Lazio is not really good in Italy right now, but on the continent they actually been very good. And you actually made a very good point. Like the point is, I always believe that Sarri is a really good tactician. However, he's someone who is so stubborn and only it goes in one direction and there is no alternative to that thing. I think if there's a coach that's going to exploit that, I think it's a coach like Thomas Tuchel because I think he's one of the most adaptive coaches I have seen alongside Unai Emery. Honestly, like there are two coaches that I believe that you can watch the game and actually see for your eyes. There is no need for anyone to break anything down. You can actually see that these guys actually adapt to stuff. So I feel like he's just that one guy that might be able to to exploit Mauricio Sarri, honestly, but I don't know how it's going to be. And also the indifference in form of Chile Immobile is something that's also affecting them as well. So it's something. It's not too much of a tie, but I hope at least Lazio can make it a contest. And about the whole Palhinha thing and all that, I don't know if Bayern can afford to spend another 100 million on a midfielder because we know what they spent with Harry Kane, and let's not forget even last year, what the package, albeit it was a less of a transfer fee for Sadio Mane, but the wages were also phenomenally high as well. So I don't know if they can play the Premier League game once more, but it's going to be quite interesting. But yeah, if you wanna be a big boy, you have to play at the big boy table. So that's just the thing, you have to do that. And then we go, to the last one. As I said, like I think for me, like City are the favorites. Like I don't know how they always get this, but like they always get an easy draw one way or another. Uh, so I do believe that Man City should be able, to get
Maybe
past.
if they rest all their
Yeah.
players and play the youth academy players, maybe then Copenhagen might have a shot.
I mean, the point is like going to Denmark actually historically has been really tough because I think Real Madrid was the last team that won there, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
I think like a lot of teams have been there and been vanquished. But I do believe that the City team is just going to be too strong for the white wall that they have similar to ours. I think the best they can get in Denmark is a draw, and then they go to England and literally their name is being spelled out on the scoreboard, something like this.
I think last season we saw this from City, right? They would go away, draw, and come back and destroy teams at the Etihad. So
Exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised. All those Copenhagen did well against the other team from Manchester. So we'll see how the big boys of Manchester react this time around.
Yeah, that's really the big boys indeed. It's going to be quite interesting. But yeah, as I just mentioned, like for me, I think City remain the favorite to win the whole thing. Although like people who want to point to their indifference and form this early in the season, but I would say this is just what City has been even last year. It was the same discussion.
I
So
think
I don't.
positively for City, Kevin De Bruyne is back. So that changes a lot of things.
Definitely, I totally agree with that. That changes a lot of things actually. Well, yeah, let's see, how the knockout round goes. I don't know. Do you think there is a stronger team in the competition than Man City, or obviously it's always about luck when it comes to this knockout phases and all that. But
I mean, there's an element of I don't actually like saying this, but I think what differentiates is that moment of quality, that moment of ingenuity that the players of exceptional quality bring. So for me personally, I don't consider it to be luck. I consider it to be something special that special players do in special moments. So teams like Real Madrid, Manchester City, and even Bayern Munich have these players. And let's not rule out PSG because Kylian Mbappe is there. As much as I wanted to see him in Europa League, as much as you wanted to see him in Europa League, the fact remains that there's a reason why we wanted to see him in the Europa League, and it's that this guy is a brilliant player. So I think these four teams, with their ability to pull out something out of nothing, and then for me, they are the favorites. But PSG also have the ability to pull out nothing from something. So they're probably a level below these other three teams. But yeah, these four teams, man.
yeah, definitely you're right. But actually the point in luck I actually wanted to point out was because Do you remember the team's interface last year on the way to the final? It was Benfica, FC
Yeah, luck
Porto,
of
and
the
AC
draw.
Milan.
Yeah, that's that.
You know, I mean, give me that draw right now, and I'm not even contesting anything. See you at Wembley. That's just the thing. So that's the point I'm trying to make, because then you look at, our run in 21 and also in 21-22 season, you could see what how unfortunate that draw was. But, that's also the thing, like, as you mentioned, that Stardust eventually, shines through, but also you can always get that. But as you rightly mentioned, that the presence of the star players, obviously just makes certain teams, favorites, whether you like them or not. Yeah, I think that's going to be enough for the UCL
I'm
because,
just
yeah,
gonna
it's,
make one point that I forgot to make about Leipzig is the fact that there have been rumors about them chasing Jadon Sancho. So it's going to be
yeah,
interesting if they get a player of his quality. Although I don't know what his quality is currently because of this whole Ten Hag Sancho drama. So and then there's also the fact that they have Timo Werner, and Timo Werner always shows up against Real Madrid even if he's in the worst of forms. So that's definitely going to be interesting.
yeah. I mean, I don't know, but actually, one thing I find intriguing is that I don't know how true it is, but I'm being told that Jadon Sancho earns more than 20 million a year at United.
Yeah, I think he's one of the top earners there.
I mean, how do they make that happen?
I mean, you only have to look at it, right? Manchester United were like this team in desperate need of a star player. So I think an English talent who's doing well in Bundesliga and uh, fairly popular. So I think they was just desperate and they gave him a lot of money just to get him.
Wow. I mean, I just, you look at that, and by contrast, you see, like, if I'm not mistaken, I think Kimmich earns around 10 million euros a year.
I mean, not every team is in the Premier League, right?
I mean, it's not
Even
about being.
I'll just be honest. Like Athletic earns more from broadcast revenue than Bayern do from the Bundesliga deals. So I think there's a definite level of economic inequality among teams in Europe. So when you look at teams like Milan, I think Mariano at Real Madrid was earning like 4.5 million euros, and the highest paid
Yeah.
player at Milan wouldn't reach that figure. So there is economic inequality even among the teams in Champions League, and with the TV deals, domestic TV deals that the Premier League has, I think they'll always have an advantage.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is, Mo Salah is reported to earn around 21, 22 million a year. So basically, Mo Salah is the indestructible guy who literally has played every single game that exists, has 200 goals and 300 appearances. This is what he's earning. And someone from, Borussia Dortmund comes and, like, the point is, I can understand if it had been a contract raise. This is the contract he signed when he joined from Borussia,
But
when basically he was coming from Germany
Farouk,
as
you
a no
also have to
one.
consider the fact that Mo Salah is playing for Liverpool and Jadon Sancho is playing for Manchester United. If Mo Salah was playing for Manchester United, he would be earning a lot more too. Because I think whether we like it or not, United have a lot of let's say economic power. They have a lot of economic pull. They are fairly popular and they earn a lot of money even without being in the Champions League. So I think they'll pay the big bucks. And at some point in time, yeah, there's also the element of mismanagement because I think their sports management, their financial management isn't top notch. I think their fans will can probably explain that better than we can. But it is what it is, and I think United, being the financial behemoths they were until recently, I think they can afford to do that, and they have done that.
Interesting. Anyways, that's their problem. Anyways, let's just go through the chat. I see there is nothing other than from Jacob himself. He says, Barca Napoli is going to be fun to watch. A Zavi meltdown.
I,
Interesting, huh? I hope, our boy Osimhen does the job and, seals the demise of Barcelona and Xavi, and
as long
also
as the meltdown is
seals.
about grass, I don't know.
Yeah, Xavi loves this things actually, and let's just move to one of Xavi's favorite things actually. I saw that he actually made a comment about that referees are human, which was after he was asked about the decision that La Liga has taken that referee and VAR conversation are going to be made public immediately after the matches, and this is going to be inaugurated on January 10, starting with the Super Cup derby in Saudi Arabia between Real Madrid and Barcelona. What's your take on this move? We've seen some of this in the Premier League. I don't know if you follow that or not. We've seen some discussions in the Premier League, especially, uh, the first one I think was when Liverpool had a goal disallowed rightfully against Spurs, and we've seen subsequent discussions as well. Do you think this is a good move, or do you think this is a bad move?
Actually, when I read the news, the first thing that popped up in my mind was the fact that I wanted to know how Farouk felt about this, because I remember you have really strong opinions about the way VAR is used and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. We definitely want to see what the referees are talking about, because there was this case in La Liga recently about they were I don't exactly remember what case it was, but then it came out in the investigation the fact that when Vinicius got sent off at Mestalla during the whole racism thing, the racist row that they had, some images weren't sent to the VAR from to the to the on-field referee. So, and then there was another thing. I think one of the team goals was missed because of this. So I think yeah, it was Espanyol whose goal was disallowed because of not all images being sent. So I think they got relegated. If they had received that goal, they probably would have been in a better situation and not got relegated. So I think they're also kind of sue La Liga for that. So La Liga, RFEF, and whoever handles the VAR. So I think that is something that has happened previously. So in the light of this, doing things like this where you are promoting transparency is definitely a step in the right direction. But then you have to realize that this is Spain, right? This is Spanish football. There's nothing transparent about it. There's always going to be a scandal lurking, just around the corner. Because I remember when the new deals for VAR were given, it was sent to a company. I think it was Media Pro, and Media Pro is owned by Jordi Rures, who also happens to be Joan Laporta's biggest backer for his presidency of Barcelona. So already there have been allegations about Barcelona running VAR and stuff like that. So it's Spain, you're definitely gonna see complaints of partiality and everything, even though you probably have the most transparent system.
That's just it, man. I was quite surprised too. So I think I learned down towards the start of the I learned that towards the start of the season that actually, like, it's the biggest backers of the of Laporta were actually the guys with VAR and stuff like that. I was like quite surprised. Like it's like like you talk about this transparency and all that, and this obvious there's a conflict of interest there. So of course, definitely, like when money is involved, of course I want to protect my money, and how do I protect my money? I protect. But then that's let's not get into the whole conspiracy theories and what is not. But for me, what I just feel is that okay, it's fine and good. You make a mistake, they publish the audios. Then what happens?
Maybe they get relegated.
As you rightly mentioned, right? As you rightly mentioned, now a team gets relegated, and that's the thing. Like, what I want, like, what these people need to understand is that people get relegated, people lose money, people lose their jobs because of this. You publish the audio, and then what happens? Nothing. What I want is for people to be held accountable. A referee, the same way the other day we were talking about the fact that a player like Sunil was saying a player like Guy Ceballos is not good enough for Real Madrid because of this. He's not able to start. That same way, a referee who is not good enough should not officiate a top flight match. There should be repercussions. You get your chance, you do not perform well, you mess up. There should be a repercussion there. I get like, okay, yeah, it's one step in the right direction, but this is just, as you said, like they will just put something out there and try to frame it in the direction that they're also humans like us. They can make mistakes and. I don't know. Like, I just feel like there is too much at stake that we are still taking baby steps in this situation, honestly.
I think the thing is, like, Farouk, referees have always made mistakes, right? Even before VAR, it happened with VAR. I think there is let's say there's an opportunity for those decisions to be rectified. So that, I think VAR is definitely helpful. With this, I think the only thing that it does is like it kind of brings out into open the referees' mistakes. Previously we were like everybody was just shouting at each other. VAR is corrupt, VAR is doing this, and VAR is doing that. But now we actually get to hear the ref's point of view and how they came to a certain decision. So I think that's definitely going to be interesting. But with how politically charged the top matches in La Liga are, especially the likes of games against the Clásico, and when it comes to the Madrid derby, or even Atleti Barca in recent years, I think that element of allegations will always be there because of how political things are in Spain when it comes to these games. So we have to look at it, maybe putting these games aside. I think there's been a general complaint about incompetence among refs. But then the thing is, like, if they make a bad decision and we decide that, okay, fine, this guy has to be consequences, first of all, we will decide what consequences. Getting them, like you said, maybe not getting the top games in La Liga, but is it going to make a difference? maybe they actually don't want to ref the top games in La Liga because it brings a lot of negative publicity as is. So probably send them to the segunda, maybe go ref in the segunda division. But the thing is, like, would we have enough refs to referee the first division then? Because from where I'm standing, I don't know, a lot of referees need to go to the segunda in that case. So I think it would definitely be interesting. We'll see how things progress. How referees take it into account. But knowing Spain and knowing how it functions, I don't really have too much hope that it's going to do anything.
Yeah, it's actually quite sad, but let's see how this, I mean, yeah, I'm complaining, but at least as you say, this is, one victory for us because one thing I've always wanted was the fact that, okay, decision has been made, but no one knows how the decision has been come true. You understand? But at least now we can find a way that, okay, that decision has been made. We can try to at least, justify that by listening to the audio and like, okay, he saw this from this aspect. Let's try to, humanize the whole VAR thing. But I do think that, it's there. Like, I mean, come on, we see in American sports, we see in tennis, we see in baseball, in cricket, like what people are doing. Like coaches have opportunities to challenge, even decision. I mean, we go to a game. Imagine like you go to the San Siro, right? You're sitting in the stadium and there's a VAR call. You don't even know what they're checking. You just see that there's a red card. You don't know because the point is, we watch this game. We don't have, our memory, our brain doesn't have a rewind or replay stuff. So you're just basically sitting in the stadium with 65,000 people, and no one knows what's happening other than the ref. Obviously, the coaching staff has an iPad and they see that. You understand? So like things like this, like how do you make sense of things like this?
I think Farouk,
obviously, like we have more modern stadiums that have like in Real Madrid have that, Besiktas have that, Tottenham have that. Some teams have this, but I don't know, man. Honestly,
I think you make an interesting point. When I first read about this, I was wondering if they were going to do it in real time. When referees were talking about how they do it in the NFL and how NFL is probably the best example. The decisions are like audible to everybody. But then I thought that this is La Liga, man. That's not going to happen. So and then I found out that they're gonna do it after the match day has ended. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all the games are over. So for me, there's also this doubt: like, what kind of footage are they going to release? Are they going to talk about the controversial ones, like Premier League has done? But I don't know, man. It's La Liga, it's Spain. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's the thing. But again, let's just go back to that. Let's not paint it all black. Like there is also a good aspect to that in the sense that, for the first time at least, in Spanish football, we're going to see some, reasoning behind decisions that have been made. To what extent that is, until it starts in January, we will not be able to tell exactly. But anyways, it is what it is. Still speaking about the VAR and all that, we had, a report today in Dario As talking about Real Madrid, battle against La Liga for the TV rights. So basically what La Liga has done is like they have this deal that actually gives insight into the dressing room, halftime team talks, huddles, pre-match routines and stuff like this as, a kind of fan engagement to kind of, engage fan furthermore. And basically, so they pay extra money, or rather part of the money you get for the TV rights is included in this. And depending on how much access you grant, you get points, which equates to money. So I think La Liga sued Real Madrid sued La Liga, and the report today in Dario also saying Real Madrid won this, and La Liga is saying, no, they're gonna, again, appeal this. Maybe more you want to shed more lights with your ever, better knowledge of every situation.
Oh, come on. It pales into comparison to what you have, but I'll try my best. I think you've explained it well already, that La Liga, in its infinite wisdom, decided to create a system wherein to improve more reachability among fans. I think they decided that teams have to now give access to dressing rooms and stuff like that. Obviously, Real Madrid didn't like that because Real Madrid, being Real Madrid, they don't agree that anybody else has the right to exploit the commercial avenue of their team, of their product. So there's always been a contention between Javier Tebas and Florentino Perez. So that's always going to be there. So I think what La Liga did is like it took the TV revenue, 25% of it that teams already get, 25% of what teams already get, and decided to put it aside in a pot. Now from that pot, they're going to distribute this revenue based on how teams perform, like you mentioned. They even have a whole points table. The last time I checked, I think Sevilla was the one leading it because of the way they have been, proactive in giving access to their dressing room and stuff like that. So although I might have to double check and make sure like who is leading right now, but Real Madrid is in the bottom. I think if Real Madrid don't do anything, they stand to lose like around 13 to 15 million euros in revenue. But then what Real Madrid has done, that they sued La Liga. I think there was a court case before that Real Madrid lost, but then they appealed and now Real Madrid have won. But like you pointed out, La Liga is going to appeal again, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's quite interesting though. But I think let me ask you this. I don't know because actually I don't have La Liga. Oh, sorry, Real Madrid TV, or was it Real Madrid Plus or Real Madrid TV? I don't know which one it is. Anyways,
RMTV.
RMTV, right?
Yeah.
It's so like, do they give access to this? Like, do they have like broadcast about this team talks or like halftime? Or I know they have like post games and pre games and something like this, but do they have like this intricate detail into the team, or like does it just not exist?
I think the issue over here is in the fact. Okay, fine. There's a question that has been raised among fans about is this ethical? Okay, I think Real Madrid, for Real Madrid, it isn't about ethics. It's more about the fact that who has the right to exploit it. And Real Madrid is saying that we're going to give La Liga access to like 2 minutes after the game, only 2 minutes after the game, La Liga come in and do their post match conference, and they should just fuck off. So I don't know. I think it's more down to that. As to your question about Real Madrid having these dressing room stuff, I I haven't actually watched the game in RMTV because I don't live in Spain, so I don't really have access to games on RMTV. But we see documentaries like after we won the 14 Champions League title, there was a documentary we've seen, then one after 13, 12, 11. So we've seen that in these situations, Real Madrid has released footage from the dressing rooms. Like there was this infamous Zidane speech in that 16-17 final, and we have seen visuals from how the team reacted in after the 21-22 in the halftime as well. Where Benzema telling Courtois, "Oh, your shooting is just going over my head. I cannot get the ball or whatever." So I think these things RMTV has put out. At the end of the day, the debate is like who has the right to exploit it commercially, and Real Madrid do not believe that anybody else should be doing that apart from them.
Interesting, interesting. I'm just gonna pose you one last question and we move on. Like, do you think like having media presence during halftime or during team huddles or team talks, do you think it has a negative effect, or like does it like kind of shed? Because the point is, we all know after we saw the Barcelona documentary with Jordi Alba crying and how crestfallen they were at halftime against Liverpool, and they became subjects of memes all over the internet and stuff like that. Or we saw the whole infamous, now infamous Pep thing where with the whole what's it called, Sadio Mane film, and Mo Salah, where he was saying like I am scared of them and shit like that, stuff like that. Like, do you think it has a negative effect on the team, or like, because for me as a fan, it's something that I actually want to see. It's something that I really want to see, like what goes on behind the scenes, like. But then obviously we know now in the age of that we had online shows and all that. Like, do you think this has a negative effect on the performance of the team, or I don't know, mental health or whatever it is?
I think if it is controlled by the clubs, they have a certain level of ability to prohibit what gets out. But then there's always going to be a fear in the players of them not being, let's say, candid when they're in the dressing room at the halftime, especially. But then at the end of the day, I think the point is that we are not professional players, so we don't really know what happens. But then, as you have rightly pointed out, there have been instances of Jordi Alba getting memed, or stuff between Liverpool players getting leaked, and or etc. etc. So I think from a human being point of view, I can speculate that it definitely does have a little bit of an effect. But overall, I think I would prefer it. Not, as fans, we definitely want to be more closer to teams we support. But then we also have to take into account the human side of it. These guys are humans too, and they need their privacy. So as long as it's controlled, not everything comes out. I think it is understandable. From a La Liga point of view, I think they want to improve the product that they have. So they want to do something different. They want to attract fans and make them feel more involved. So I understand where they're coming from. Teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona probably don't need that level of reachability because they are already fairly popular. But teams like Sociedad, Betis, they could definitely use some help, with these things. So I think it's just a difference between which situation you are in. As Real Madrid fans, we happen to be in a privileged position where we get a lot of access to information about our teams, but the others they don't. So for them, it's probably
Yeah,
helpful.
That's a very uh, valid way to look at it. Honestly, it's a very valid approach in the sense that it's not about you as an individual, but rather it's about the league as a whole. The position that Real Madrid and Barcelona find themselves is definitely significantly different to even people like Atletico Madrid, which are also renowned household name teams as well. However, switching from one controversy to another, let's round up our controversial discussions and eventually start our preview of Alaves. With the whole Super League verdict, which is gonna come on Thursday. I think it's Thursday afternoon. So basically, the decision about the if the Super League is valid. If I'm not wrong, like if I'm wrong, we'll just interfere. Like the validity of the Super League, it's gonna be decided
I don't think
at
it's
the court.
exactly the validity of Super League. What is under debate is the monopolistic position of UEFA, is because UEFA right now is the organizer of the competition, is also the regulator of competitions being organized in European confederations, right? So both FIFA and
Yeah.
UEFA kind of like hold this position. So right now, what clubs Real Madrid, Barcelona are saying is the fact that uh, okay, this is not about Barcelona, Real Madrid individually. It's more about them being represented by A22 Sports. They're saying that UEFA as regulator and as an organizer is acting as a monopoly by not allowing others to organize competitions. Whereas UEFA is saying that you can organize competitions, we're just not going to allow your players to play in our competitions or your teams to play in our competition. So I think that is what the court case is about. I don't exactly remember the position of the person who is supposed to give an opinion on this. There is a person who advises the European courts. I think that opinion did not come in favor of Real Madrid and Barcelona, but the eventual decision is going to be made by European Court. So that's going to come out in 21st. So it will definitely be interesting to see which way this goes, because this has potential to have a lot of impact on the way football exists.
Exactly. That's when I want to come into, like I think I read something by, it's like the guy from Athletic is Dermot, right? Dermot Corrigan or whatever it
Demo
is.
Corrigan.
He's the one who wrote for you guys for Real Madrid, no?
No, he reports to Barcelona, I think.
You're right. Okay, anyways, like I
Yeah.
think I read something by him because
Yeah,
I
but
kind of
he
remember.
basically
Hmm?
covers Spanish football.
Yeah, exactly. And he wrote something which was really interesting. And actually he says that like the way, Bernabeu actually changed the way people see football in Europe by, spearheading the establishment of UEFA Champions League, or rather, I don't know what it was called back then, but whatever, the European Cup back then, how he championed that and basically created a legacy for himself in European football. It's kind of similar to what Florentino Perez is trying to do right now as well by championing, or rather, as you mentioned right now, like this is something that it's basically a seismic moment for European football. If Verdi comes out in favor of Real Madrid and Barcelona and A22 and the other guys who are still part of it, like it changes football as we know it, or rather, it changes European football as we know it. So, like, do you think this is something that Perez is pursuing at the costs of Real? Because obviously it's high. You play, it's poker, or whatever it is. Like it's high reward, high risk. Like, is it? Do you think it's something that he's risking at the potential impact of what Real Madrid could face as a ban from UEFA competitions, or I don't know, a fine, considering the fact that we just had to take extra 300 million euros in the development of the stadium. Like, do you think it's playing with, yeah, I don't know, the term is like flying too close to the sun, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah, first of all, I think you made a very interesting analogy about how Santiago Bernabeu was involved in the setting up of the European Cup, because I think he definitely played a key role in that, and Real Madrid, as a result, was like very involved in the setting up of the whole thing, and ever since then, Real Madrid have been synonymous with European competitions, and we have to remember that even back then, the English FA was like the only one that was kind of like, yeah, we don't really like this, and I think they did not even allow Chelsea to participate in the initial competitions. So I think Santiago Bernabeu is definitely somebody who has been a reference point for Florentino, because everything he's done has been to emulate him. First of all, signing big name players like Santiago Bernabeu was able to sign the likes of Puskas and Di Stefano and all those guys, Raymond Copa and everybody. So Florentino tried to replicate it with Zidane, Figo, Ronaldo. Bringing all these top players to Real Madrid. He sort of brought Real Madrid back after I wouldn't exactly say stagnant, because Lorenzo Sanz Real Madrid won two Champions Leagues, but Real Madrid was losing that aura about them. but Florentino Perez restored it with his own Galacticos project, and now with his second Galacticos project, and now I guess now we're in the third Galacticos project. So wherever we are. So I think Florentino Perez has definitely had a lot of impact in European football. I think even before this, with his Galacticos philosophy and his pursuit of commercialization in football, I think he's the one who really spearheaded that. Premier League has taken it to another level, but Florentino Perez is the one who brought it to club level. I remember Real Madrid being like 17th or 18th in the revenue list before Florentino Perez came around, and then suddenly they skyrocketed to the first spot. Although there are always questions about things like this and Florentino Perez and his his political involvements and whatever, but avoiding that, sidestepping that whole conversation, I think Florentino Perez so far has always thought in the best interest of Real Madrid. The way I look at it is like we had a discussion, in the initial time of this podcast about how Manchester United was paying a lot more money, and Joshua Kimmich playing for Bayern wasn't getting that amount of money. So I think you have to look at it in that frame of reference, because Real Madrid, although we have a lot of revenue, there's going to be a time when the Premier League clubs are going to catch up and they're going to supersede us. Right now, the situation of clubs like Milan is the fact that Milan cannot pay players as much as the bottom half of Premier League can pay. So this is a pretty sad situation for them. And when you look at it, Milan, such traditionally big names of European football, even Inter and like the Juventus, but then these guys cannot compete financially with the bottom half of the Premier League. I think there's already a Super League, and it's the Premier League. I think we cannot really sidestep that. It's a fact of life, and I think Florentino Perez with this Super League project is trying to, let's just say, keep Real Madrid in the upper echelon football. Maybe this doesn't happen in like the next 5 or 6 years, but there's going to be a decline if something like this doesn't happen. So yeah, you have a point when you're talking about him flying too close to the sun, but I think he's doing that for the betterment of Real Madrid, and I think most Real Madrid members or associates do understand that.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, I also, read something from Coriana as well. I think Coriana is a Real Madrid guy, right?
Who?
Like there's Coriana as well from the Athletic, no?
Mario Cortegana?
Cortiana, or whatever
Yeah.
the name is pronounced. I don't know if you read the piece that he wrote, that, there's a kind of feeling around across the Bernabeu that actually like Perez is like a divine person. Like he's a supreme being. I don't know. Do you read that? Like I read it and I was like, God, like this felt like a cult, bro.
Now, I'll say Florentino definitely has a lot of influence, because ever since I remember the first time he won the presidency, there were some doubts about whether he's going to win it, and we all know the legendary story of him signing Figo from Barcelona to make it happen. So, but the first time ended in disgrace. But the way Florentino and everything happened. Not Florentino, Ramon Calderon. I don't know if you guys were around then, but there was a huge scandal about the way elections were being conducted at Real Madrid. So they had to step around. And then there was the Barcelona dropping 6-2, one of the darkest days in my life as a Real Madrid supporter. So people were literally begging for Florentino Perez to come back. He left in a cloud, but then he was welcomed back like a king. And he comes back and immediately he signs Cristiano Ronaldo, Kaká, Karim Benzema, Xabi Alonso, Alvaro Arbeloa. So, Real Madrid goes from signing players like Ruud van Nistelrooy and Rafael van der Vaart to signing big names like Cristiano and Kaká. So suddenly we were back in the upper echelons of football. So I think there's always going to be a positive connotation like linked with Real Madrid. It doesn't hurt the fact that ever since then Real Madrid have won 5 Champions Leagues. So, Florentino Perez, everything he has done, everything he's done for this club. I think even us, although we don't live in Madrid, we understand the fact that this guy loves Real Madrid a lot more than anybody else probably does. So he's always taken steps in the betterment of the club. So I think everybody understands that, and that's why he has a lot of support.
That's very valid. And as you said, like everything just backs that up. Everything that's happened since then, and the trophies that have been won has also backed that up. So, like, if I'm not wrong, more like to my understanding, like all 12 clubs are still legally in this tournament. They haven't left yet legally, although they all have put out statements and nonsense like that. I don't know if you have information about that.
Okay, I don't really have information about that. I just know the same things that you have read probably about nobody having officially started the proceedings to leave or whatever. There was some statement that Juventus put out that they were in conversation with Barcelona and Real Madrid to leave the Super League thing, and obviously Inter Milan have been rumored to have initiated those proceedings or whatever. but I think a lot of it will become clear after the decision comes out. And with the thing is like with the Premier League, there's already been some penalties being imposed on teams that decide to do it again. So it will be interesting to
Yeah.
see how it all goes.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Actually, actually, one thing I felt is that if there is if there are American finances who are willing to give 500 billion as a JP Morgan, if I'm not mistaken, and then giving bonuses of 300 million euros as a joining bonus to these teams, like how can the Premier League compete with that?
I
I
mean,
mean, for all the grades that all the money that EPL has, like that's okay. Let's not say peanuts, but like that's nothing compared to what these guys are offering.
Farooq, I'll say this: I think it was 4 to 5 billion, and Premier League recently signed a domestic TV revenue deal of 2.6 billion or something like that, 2.9 billion. So
Yeah,
the thing is like these guys are already approaching that, and then we also have to consider the fact that Premier League, because of the way it has been marketed, because of the way the financial, aspect of it is, they have a lot of rich owners. So people like Saudi, PIF investing in it, and then you have UAE's, Abu Dhabi Ports United and everything, CF City Football Group. So these guys definitely have the money to fight against it. I think what's going to be interesting to see if PIF gets involved in the Super League project, if the decision comes in its favor, because PIF, obviously the Saudi government definitely wants their football teams to be at the pinnacle of football. So it's going to be interesting if they get involved. There were some suggestions about Florentino talking to, not Florentino, but per se, but the Super League organization talking to like around 60 clubs in Europe to form a three-tiered structure of football system
yeah,
of a new Super League. Just let's to say. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see how it goes.
yeah. I'm just thinking now. The next comment they're gonna have is that, oh, what Man City has faced cannon fodder for the past 5 years. Is this what you guys want to watch every year? I think if that's something someone is gonna quote, for the defenders of the European Super League, that's something definitely that's gonna be quoted. But anyways, we have Jacob in the chat and he's saying like, why don't other clubs see that Super League means less money to UEFA and more money to them? Interesting. You have
I think
anything to say?
the narrative isn't what other clubs see. The narrative is the fact that a lot of um, a lot of opposition to the Super League actually came from the English clubs, right? There was a lot of
Yeah,
protests in England because of their football pyramid and whatnot. The way I see it, English fans in a privileged position, right? They have the richest league. The league is almost the Super League, and then the fact is like they have rich owners. When their owners don't spend money, and they want owner to actually invest money and spend that, they don't really like them only spending the money that club is making. They want them to put their own money and spend into the club. Otherwise, they start protesting. I mean, you've seen this with dozens of clubs. So I think uh, English fans did a lot of protests when it comes to club fans in Spain and Italy, or I don't know about Italy, but I do know about Spain, that there wasn't as much opposition as there was in England. So I think clubs do realize that, but then they have sort of bowed down to the fan pressure, and then there was also the fact that UEFA was clamping down really hard. So I think this court decision is going to be very pivotal. We'll see what happens if the decision does not come in favor of UEFA. It comes in the favor of A22 Sports and everybody. We'll see how the clubs react.
okay, so right, guys, you've heard it. Stay tuned. Like on Thursday night post match against Alaves, I think we're gonna have these discussions again. Because by then, hopefully, if we're all still alive, we will have the verdicts from that, and hopefully, we will usher in the new era of Real Madrid and European football together. Because the truth is, like either way, it's gonna be a new era for us. Because if it goes our way, it's great. If it doesn't go our way, most likely there's going to be, an expulsion or, a ban for a certain period of time, maybe a fine, who knows. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, so, coming to the end of what was supposed to be a preview of Alaves, let's, discuss, the trip down to Alaves. We're going to face Alaves, who are 13th in the league. Just came back from, a drubbing against Girona. I think it was on Monday, if I'm not mistaken, they played against Girona.
Yeah, yesterday.
And they lost, yeah, they lost 3-0 and unfortunately allowed Girona to leapfrog us again. They're basically the kingmakers for the winter champions. But I think if Girona drop points, we can still be the winter champions, actually.
Yeah,
But yeah, more like,
I
go
think
on.
the fact remains that I think Girona have the upper hand if there was such a thing as winter champions, because they have 2 points ahead of us now. So not only do we need to win, we also need to hope that Girona drop points. So for
Drop
me,
points.
it's all in Girona's hands.
Yeah, I mean, there is a team such as winter champions. The 7 of the last 8 league champions have actually been winter champions. And the interesting thing is that the eighth team is actually Real Madrid, and they weren't actually technically not. They were they had the same points with Barcelona in 2018, 2019,
Uh-huh.
but they were second just based on goal difference. So
Okay.
that's why basically you can say it's like 8 of the last, winter champions have actually been eventual champions. So it's hopefully we can also buck
Where
the
I
trend
was
as we have done in
coming
the
from
previous
was
time.
actually the fact that some leagues, especially in the Americas, they have this official designation of winter champions. I don't really think that Spain has that.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Interesting. Yeah, it reminds me of, the Brazilian league, the Brazilian Serie A, where they had the team that won, I think, 18 games in the first half of the season, Botafogo, I
Botafogo,
think,
yeah.
or but yeah,
Abertura and
and
Clausura.
exactly. And then they came to the second half of the season, and I think they won one game, two draws, and every game was a loss or something like that. I was like,
They're
God,
on
like it
relegation
was
form.
exactly. It was like, Invincibles form in the first half, and then you have relegation form in the second half. Well, that's the thing. You never can tell. The winter is too early. So, Girona fans, wherever you are, or Man City fans, wherever you are, tranquilo, tranquilo, calm down. Anything can happen. Well, yeah, on the more serious note, back to Alaves. So, what are you looking forward to see more? The last game of the year. What are the things that you would like to pinpoint towards the game?
For me, I think it's definitely going to be interesting seeing how Ancelotti reacts to the fact that David Alaba is no longer there, and we are missing a lot of other players as well. So how he decides what kind of a strategy he uses come the end of the season, because although we know the players he's going to use, because Nacho is the only replacement we have available, but I want to see how he adjusts his tactics, because without David Alaba, I think we're going to miss a player who's capable of progressing the ball forward from the back line. So now we're missing that player. So Tony Cruz becomes even more important, because he's the only guy who's going to be able to do it. Nacho, although he's decent on the ball, I don't think he's at the level of David Alaba when it comes to ball progression. So it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts to this. And it's going to, another talking point would be the performances of Rafa Marin, because I think Rafa Marin is a candidate who could potentially come back and be a body, a cover till Militao returns in February or March because of the David Alaba situation. So I think his performance would be also something to watch out for.
Yeah, that's an interesting shout. And it's like, Rafa Marin definitely would be, a subject that will be highly discussed in how he performs or doesn't perform. And, given that just after the match, I think the next time he puts onto the pitch will be, the January transfer window is open. So it means that Real Madrid will have the chance to, either terminate or recall or whatever, the term is for him to come back to Real Madrid. But even more importantly, more pressing matters is, how we line up to this game, because as you rightly mentioned, this is a team that's actually, facing a crisis that, at least since I started watching football, I have never seen before in any team across anywhere. I don't know, maybe you've seen or not, but I have never seen this in my life. So it's quite interesting. And how we adapt to this or how we don't adapt to this will be really interesting. And you already highlighted, the situation with Tony Cruz. And that brings me to the question, like, do we think we see a trauma start in this game?
Based on last game, I don't think so. I wouldn't be too optimistic because he looked a little bit rusty. So probably Ancelotti, kind of like, eases him in. I also want to point out the fact that Alaves have only scored 11 goals in La Liga this season. They're the team with the least amount of goals scored in this season. So their offensive output is definitely lacking. So I think Ancelotti might decide to take a chance and stick with the old Valverde Cruz pivot and be a lot more offensive.
Nice. Well, that's a good shot, actually. This is the team with the least amount of goals, and it's coming against our team that is in form, especially with players like Rodrigo and Jude Bellingham, and also Brian Diaz, tearing defense left, right, and center. So I can totally, get why you have that rhetoric. But on the other hand, like we also had the situation with Ferland Mendy. Like, do you have any update regarding the situation?
Yeah, I think there was an update today about the fact that they did tests and he's going to be out for around 10 days. So yeah, 2 weeks.
So that's just plays in time that we play, our next game against Mallorca. I think it's on the 3rd of January, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. So yeah, that's fair. He can get early Christmas and New Year holiday, I guess.
Yeah, they already
Anyways,
had the new Christmas party at Real Madrid, so some time with the
so
family.
that means, I guess, more chance for Ferland Mendy and sorry, for Frank Garcia then. I'm assuming,
Yeah,
for Frank Garcia to
uh,
to claim a stake.
I mean, with the way we are losing players, we need everybody on board. So Fran Garcia against Alaves is, we're gonna see it.
Yeah,
Probably
so
Sunil
it's
is not
quite
gonna be
interesting.
happy about it, but yeah, he'll have to
We're gonna
accept
have
it.
Fran on one side and Lucas Vasquez on the other side. Like
Mm.
that's quite interesting, honestly. Like that's something that I'm not too comfortable with. But as you rightly pointed out, like Alaves' the attack is setting defenses on fire. So maybe if there was a game to try that, maybe this might have been the game.
I actually had an interesting stat that I came across. Like I think it was, I believe, today in the morning, that Lucas Vasquez, like when you compare key passes per 90 across players who have played at least 250 minutes in the Champions League, he's number two in that list. So I think offensively Lucas is definitely going to help us out in this game, but defensively, yeah, definitely, I think Valverde will have to work overtime to be covering for Fran on one side and Lucas on the other.
That's just it. As you rightly pointed out, that the mobility of Fede Valverde will even be all the more important because I think Lucas Vazquez, obviously he was an attacker in the past, so it shouldn't be too surprising that at least he has a decent attacking output. But the issue always comes back to the defensive part of the game. But yeah, let's see. It's looking quite interesting. So I think without spending too much time because there is not a lot to talk about. It's Alaves with all due respect to Alaves, we can just, switch and just go into our lineup and then just talk about predictions and just wrap this
I
up.
I think
So,
before we do that, I think there could be a little one or 2 points that we could highlight about Alaves. I think
okay.
it's definitely going to be interesting to see how Rafa Marin plays, but then there's also Antonio Blanco who's going to be coming back with them. So that is another point where another player to keep an eye out for. And then their striker Omorodian, I think he is somebody. He's on loan from Atleti. He spent the last year at Granada, and I think he's the top scorer currently. So it's going to be interesting. He had a brilliant season last year. I think he's a Spanish under 21 international. So he had a brilliant season at Granada. This season he's at Alaves. From what I've seen, I'll be honest. Like I failed to see what Atleti saw in him to spend the money and get him there. But he's incredibly highly touted. Part of it could be because he's playing in Alaves and their offensive aspects aren't that great. So that could be an issue. But this is somebody that Spanish football on the whole has like high hopes for. So that would be an interesting player to see, definitely.
Actually, it's quite interesting to point out that actually Alaves has won 13 of their 16 points at home. I think they have 16 points if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
They've actually won 13 of their 16 points at home this year. Although they haven't won away since 2021. They haven't won an away match since May of 2021. So it tells us that, we are going to a place that actually might be, a sort of a fortress for them. So
Yeah,
they're not just gonna
and another
lay
interesting
over.
thing would be the fact that Joselu is gonna, if he plays, he gets to play in his own stomping ground, right? Because I think
Yeah.
Alaves is the place where the resurgence of Joselu started, so to speak. Because that is when he started on an upward trend. He's from Alaves, he went to Espanyol, and from Espanyol, he's now at Real Madrid. So I think it's gonna be a special game for him if he gets time to play.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think he spent the longest time at Alaves, right?
I think so.
So yeah, it's gonna be quite interesting, but I don't know, maybe okay, yeah, basically that's what we're gonna discuss, afterwards. So yeah, let's just, dive to our lineups and see what it's looking like. So we're gonna start with the whole egg and chicken debate again. Is it Kepa or is it Looney?
Yeah, we did talk about this. I think before. I think it's gonna be interesting to see what Ancelotti goes with. Who Ancelotti goes with. In one of his press conferences, he said that he's gonna be rotating till Christmas. So it would be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if he brings on Kepa, but then I think Lunin also deserves continuity. I think you've been a big proponent of sticking to one goalkeeper and not being too, let's to put it this way, not having too many rotations at the goalkeeping spot. So I cannot disagree with that either. So I hope Ancelotti sticks with Lunin and gives him a chance until he gives him a reason not to. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Kepa plays either.
Interesting. That's just the situation we have now. So still we haven't answered the question if it's the egg or the chicken. I think the debate will just keep going until the end of time then.
Yeah.
All right then. So we go to the CB positions. Basically, we have only two fit CB, so there is no discussion there. It's Nacho and Tony Rudiger playing together.
Maybe
And
Chouameni comes off the bench to replace one of these guys.
hopefully that doesn't happen because if that happens, most likely it means one of them has gotten a red card or someone got injured again. So I really hope
There
that
has
does not
been
happen.
an interesting discussion about that on Spanish media, and they were talking about how going forward we have to look at Chouameni as a centre back because Real Madrid could potentially not sign a centre back replacement. So that's going to be an interesting situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like in FIFA, you designate a position change for a player, you just set training, and after a couple of weeks, your assistant coach sends you an email. Yeah, okay, this person is free to play this position.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's quite so.
I,
I think
I
that's
I would just like to point out this team would be a dream team for Pep Guardiola because we have Kamavinga at left back, Tchouameni playing centre back, Jude playing striker. So like this is the midfield FC.
well, that's quite interesting actually. That's really interesting. Well, anyways, let's we already talked about the flanks that we mentioned with Fran Garcia and Lucas Vasquez. Also, the lack of personnel just demands that there is no competition for that position as well, unless someone miraculously gets back to fitness, which we aren't expecting. And then we go to the middle of the park, and as Mo rightly said before, a double pivot of, or something that looks like that, of Tony Kroos and Fede Valverde looks like what's going to happen again. And then we might have the same situation with, the roaming tens, if you want to call it that, with Modric and Jude, or Modric and Brahim, I don't know.
I
And
think
then,
probably Modric and Jude. With Valverde, I would just like to point out the fact that I think today he did not train any trade like inside on his own, but the report is like he should be back training with the team tomorrow. So that might be a little bit iffy, but I hope nothing is wrong there.
well, okay, just another one. I mean, what haven't we had before? So this is nothing new. I mean, that's the thing. Like, this is a season where people just, tear their ACLs and shit like that. So, like, him training indoors is like good news. Yeah. So, we talk. So, you're saying it's gonna be because why I'm actually saying so is that like Jude is not the most. Is not the most. What's it called? The most forward player, I think. Right? It's usually like Modric or Brahim. Like Jude is a bit more these days, at least. He's a bit more like.
Yeah, I think he does play a little deeper, but then he makes those runs into the box that others don't. But when Modric plays, or even Brahim, these guys are the ones who are like initiating the press. They're deciding when to press and everything. So I think Modric definitely does that well. And last game, I think he had a lot of impact. He had a lot of key passes, and he was pretty influential in the game overall. So I think given the way he hasn't had the best of minutes from Ancelotti, I think the situation is kind of ideal to let him continue and build that rhythm. So I think Ancelotti probably goes with him. Although there's also a question of if Ancelotti decides to bring on Ceballos and start him instead. But I don't think it will come instead of at the expense of Modric is probably going to come maybe deeper between Cruz and Fede Valverde.
But then on the other hand, like, okay, we know Rodrigo starts up top. Well, what about Modric out for Joselu? And then it's a Roman turn of Brahim and Jude. And the reason why I bring this up is because like Modric played the entire 90 at the Bernabeu, across the weekend. So don't you think that's something that might be taken into consideration as well?
I think that's valid, but I just have a gut feeling that he's not going to bench Modric right now.
Hmm. Okay. I mean, Mo has sources at the Bernabeu, by the way.
No,
So
man, I
if
don't
he's
really
saying
have. Please, please,
if he's
please,
saying this,
don't
just
do
keep
that.
quiet and say yes, sir.
Don't do that. The one with the sources to that, man, not me.
Anyway, so that kind of rounds out our starting XI. We have the egg and chicken situation with Kepa and Lunin, and then we go with our basically like what's it called? Is it uncompetitive? No, uncompetitive is not a word, right? I mean, there is basically no competition. Like this is just the back four that we
Yeah,
have, irrespective of what fixture we're gonna play.
the back
With
four,
Frank Garcia.
the back four picks itself, but not for the reasons we would want to.
Exactly. So it's just a back four of Frank Garcia, Lucas Vasquez on the flanks, and Nacho and Tony Rudiger in the center of the defense. And then we have a midfield four of Tony Cruz, Fede Valverde, Luka Modric, and Jude Bellingham. And then up top, we're looking at both Brian Diaz and Rodrigo. But do you think there's any chance where Joselu starts? Or do you think it's just Brian showing as well?
I think it could be interesting to see if Brahim plays in a deeper role, but the way things are and the way Ancelotti has approached, I think it's probably going to be Brahim and Rodrigo.
Okay, perfect. So we've been over 1 hour into this, so let's just call it a day, and it means it's time for predictions more.
Yeah, I think this is one where I'm very iffy about the predictions. I'm going to give you an interesting stat, right? So since 2015-16 season, right, on match day 18, which is the one that we're going to be facing against Alaves, Real Madrid have only won one game on match day 18, and they have scored only 4 goals. So in 15-16, we drew with Valencia at 2 goals each. In 16-17, we won against Malaga 2 goals to 1. And then since then, 17-18, we lost. 18-19, we lost. And since 19-20, we have drawn every match day 18 game, and we have scored a grand total of 0 goals. So this is definitely going to be a very tough match to predict. I would be surprised if it ends up being a draw, but I hope for Emirates' sake that we win this game.
Okay, so yeah, Moaz actually basically jinxed it all, but I'm gonna go against the jinx and say this is the day, we break that, we break the curse. The curse of match day 18 is to be broken. Yeah, I think Real Madrid goes for a victory here, and I do think like Alaves' home form is gonna definitely come into play. So I think it's gonna be quite a difficult encounter for Real Madrid. But I still, I definitely do. I kind of feel like this is one of those games that I hate to watch in the sense that Real Madrid wins, and then we come on, and then Sunit praises Jude Bellingham like there is no tomorrow. But it's a game that if it was possible, I would pay you to not watch that game because I feel like it's going to be a really, really shitty and scrappy game with scrappy goals. But then, yeah, the Real Madrid fans are going to do Real Madrid fans and, pretend like Judas is coming of Jesus Christ again. I don't know. What do you think?
No, and I think it's definitely going to be interesting. Alaves and Mendizorroza is going to be interesting. Like you pointed out, they got 13 out of 16 points at home, so we can never be easy. And I think Real Madrid have a track record of taking it easy against small teams and missing out on key points that hurt us at the end of the season, and especially this season with Girona. Being the table toppers, they are the runaway leaders. So I think we need to keep in close contact with them. And I hope they lose against Betis.
Hope so, fingers crossed, but I think, Pellegrini can do a job with his team, but, you never can tell, like, you always see that, but, finds a way to come out at the end of it all. Lastly, before we go more, like, I just want to ask you a question. It's irrelevant, though. Like, how much of an investment does Citigroup have in Girona?
I think they have an ownership stake. I think it's around 40 to 50%. I think some of it is owned by SoftBank. Some of it, I'm not exactly sure, but I do know that they have the benefits that that Girona has had from City Football Group is obviously players on loan like Jan Cuoto and Savio.
Castellanos from the last year.
Sorry.
Castellanos from the last year.
I was gonna actually say Castellanos, but then I corrected myself because he's not at Girona anymore. So players like this, but I think a lot of credit also goes to Michel and how he has managed to, create this team. And then they have players like Miguel, brilliant player, Eric Garcia on loan, a shit player but somehow still performing.
The question though, the reason why I asked this is like I am actually wondering, like there's all this this shit ton of players that Guardiola doesn't want. For example, the key player is like Calvin Phillips, and then I'm thinking like, what if Girona just all of a sudden decides that we're gonna loan all of these guys?
Nah, man, I think the reason they can't do that is because La Liga's FFP is strict. So you can't really come in and invest a lot of money and bring players in because all of the money has to be accounted by revenue, and the revenue has to be sustainable. So the way La Liga rules are, you can't just come in and throw a lot of investor financing and bring players.
But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like it's a loan. Basically, City is covering the wage. You're just paying something that's insignificant.
No, La Liga rules do not allow that.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, at least we're safe because otherwise we might City might decide that in January even Girona are still actually there. Okay, let's reinforce these guys, and we're in for a serious top four battle. But if that's the case, then
I think La Liga will adjust for the fact that if they aren't like paying fair wages, let's say if they decide Girona is going to have this player for free, like €0, I think La Liga will step in and assign a value to it in that case.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I told you guys. Yeah, Mo is Mr. Know-it-all. He has information on everything.
I'm not know-it-all. I may be wrong. You never know. I might just be pretending in front of you guys to be knowledgeable.
Okay, then I think with that we can come to the end of our pod today. Any final thoughts, more? Anything you want to say to your lovers out there who are watching you?
No, man. I think I would just like to say, I'm very thankful to be graced by the presence of Farouk. I feel myself lucky to be doing this review with him. Although I'm sure Farouk is missing Jacob right now, but yeah, it's been a pleasure. Yeah. I always love talking about Real Madrid, so I love being on here.
Jacob deserted me for partying, man. So more like you're the new number one now, actually.
Friendship ended with Jacob.
Yeah, okay. Anyways, guys, with that we come to an end, and as usual, Mo, we sign out by saying Hala Madrid.
Madrid.
Recording